Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes. I'm the Chief Sales Architect and author of Bulletproof Selling here. And we believe at this company that hope is not a sales strategy. So we're here to increase the performance of salespeople and the results that their teams get. So this Bulletproof Selling series, it shares insights from the top minds in sales, from best-selling authors, trainers, and especially those out there actually managing sales and sales teams. So our commitment is that out of every single episode that you get to watch or listen to, you're going to get a system that you can use no matter the size of your team or the size of your sales goals. So I'm very excited to be having our guest on today, Mr. Bill Butts. Now, Bill came to us through an association that we've had a lot of contact with over the years, CIMA. And these are literally the people that keep the world moving during storms and, of course, they keep the world beautiful, especially outside buildings. So if you think that you have a tough sell sometimes, I mean, these folks are literally selling grass to the people where grass grows. I mean, and Bill's going to share with us how he's able to do that because he's got a multiple decade experience in this industry, plus standing up new sales teams, plus making sure that the handoff between sales and operations happens flawlessly, stuff that I know every salesperson is concerned with, especially if you're in that model of business. So, Bill, welcome to the show, sir. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it. Thank you. And also thank you for your service. There's
absolutely,
my phone.
Sir. Yeah. Thank you. So Bill, share with us, what's been your experience thus far in your career as it applies to sales? Have you always been in sales? Did you find yourself kind of transitioning into this role? Share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I started, graduating from college with a business degree, and back in the '80s, there was, the flow of candidate opportunities wasn't as easy as it is today with Indeed and all these postings. So, going out and pounding the pavement and getting, resumes in front of people, physical hard copy resumes probably wasn't something I was up for the challenge right away. So I had some experience in the landscape industry from working around golf and landscapers. So I decided to start my own business right out of school, which in hindsight probably wasn't the best decision. I probably should have gone and worked with somebody for a number of years and then learned and then done something. But in the end, I think it was basically, it was the boot camp, to use a military analogy, boot camp on how to run a business and how to create customer relationships and all that. So it did serve me well, but I moved from there into a couple of different organizations and was able to lead some sales organizations for some national companies. I was able to help grow, people's companies with leadership positions, account management, sales positions. So, developing people has been a passion of mine, and developing relationships with customers has worked out really well for me for the past 20 plus years. So
awesome. Now, you heard us open the show by saying that hope is not a sales strategy. So you've seen a lot of salespeople, you've managed a lot of salespeople. Where do you see salespeople over relying on hope in their careers?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with salespeople is they don't really truly know their numbers, right? So they should really know their close ratio, the number of proposals on the street, the number of proposals they need to hit their sales goal. And if they're consistent with knowing their numbers, they should be able to figure out if month over month, if they don't have, say they have to hit an $800,000 goal and they're closing at 30%, they need to be putting $2.4 million of proposals on the street. It's not that hard.
Right.
And if they know how many proposals they have on the street and how many they're short, that would probably, especially salespeople, a lot of individual contributors, they kind of work on their own. They're kind of lone rangers. And if they don't have anybody checking on them, then they may fall behind. And by not knowing your numbers, it's easy to fall behind quickly. So I think that's one of the biggest strategies I would give, young and existing salespeople is know your numbers.
Yep, and you've had to actually stand up sales teams, and I think you're in the midst right now of training another salesperson. So share with us a little bit about the stumbling blocks that you see new salespeople hit, whether they have experience selling or not. I'm coming into a new company. There's a learning curve. So what are some things that I need to watch out for if I'm a sales leader? I need to make sure my junior sales folks don't trip over.
Yeah, I would say to use an analogy from a very, very great football coach, Bill Parcells, he says, give me the person, I'll make them a player. So I think in the industry, sales-wise, you want to find someone that has sales skills and sales techniques and best practices that had some success with. They might not have experience in your industry, but you can teach them your industry. And I think that's the biggest thing for sales leaders when they're out recruiting new people is find somebody that you can be comfortable coaching and bringing your organization best practices to them rather than them coming in with all these other myriad of best practices and try and fit them into your program. So I would say keep it simple. Find the people that you feel comfortable working with and trust. And, my biggest thing is building relationships. I'm a big relationship salesperson. So if you find somebody that has a skill set building relationships and has a core network, I think that would be a good candidate for you. We're doing that currently right now. We've got a new salesperson that came to us. He came to us from selling yearbooks to high school.
Yeah.
It's an interesting dynamic because he only has one customer per town, right? One high school or one middle school. So he would lead the country in cold calling sales. So to me, he was a true hunter, and he had a great attitude, has a great attitude. We're looking forward to, helping him learn our business. But so far, it's been off to a great start, and we're excited to see where he takes it.
And now, so a lot of organizations, they try to find coachable junior salespeople. And of course, you want your own salespeople, no matter how senior they are, to also be coachable. The other side to that coin, of course, is having an organization where folks don't have to learn lessons the hard way for decades before they finally pick up on what works and what doesn't. And the way that this is usually done inside of a sales team, because we have a lot of clients that we go into, they say, hey, Sean, we need help. I say, great, where are your processes? Show me your systems. And they scratch their heads. They're like, well, our salespeople are selling. Like, that's their process. It's like, oh, well, this is a massive issue if you want to spin your people up faster. So where do you recommend sales teams start in building processes, in building systems, so that when a junior person does join or somebody transfers in or even a salesperson leaves, all that stuff doesn't leave with them? You know what I mean? It's like, how do you begin to do that inside of an organization so that you can spin somebody up faster?
Yeah, I would lean heavily on your CRM system, whatever you use, whatever system is out there that fits your industry. But, fact finding, we call it detective work. You got to find out who the decision makers are, who are the gatekeepers at certain businesses. We sell commercial landscape and snow management services. So we don't necessarily deal with a decision maker at the physical building. We could knock on doors all we want, but they're not going to be there.
Yeah.
So we need to teach our team and we need to coach our individual salespeople on how to find that information. And once you find it, then where do you catalog it? So we found that the CRM system has been a great tool for us. We're using a marketing PR agency to kind of commingle, work with our CRM and help them get that information out and, just soft sell, information pieces. So I would say start there, really make sure your CRM is rock solid, bulletproof, to use an analogy, and then find how you could possibly, grow that. What does your CRM system offer for add-ons and bolt-ons to make it more robust?
And as we start to think about CRMs, because I'm absolutely same aligned with you, CRMs are critical because I can only keep so much information in my head. So what we saw over the course of a couple of years of studying this, just really tracking the results of more than 10,000 sales calls, is that the folks that were able to innovate were able to add more value to their prospects and their clients even, and they were more likely to get into those sales conversations instead of having to remember, what did I talk to this person about last week or last month, or what facts did I gather from them? And basically, if you're trying to go from memory and you're managing more than, I'd say, half a dozen prospects, you almost have to relearn every conversation on the phone again. And that's really annoying for your prospects because they know they shared the information with you, and you got to get it all a new time if you're not really pulling it out of a CRM. So if I'm onboarding new salespeople, what is the thing that I need to make sure that they're either looking for in their CRM, or as a company, what are the things I need to, be like fields, if you will, that I need to make sure my salespeople are really tracking and filling out in every conversation?
Yeah, I would say, the one thing that I've learned from a senior member that I work with for a long time is never make a customer ask you the same question twice. Right?
That's valuable there.
If they ask you something the second time, there's a good chance that you're probably not even in the mix anymore, right? So how do you find yourself cataloging and capturing all that critical information, and when do you do it? I say do it right away. I say get out of your meeting, get out to your CRM, pop your laptop open, everybody's mobile, and load in the conversation. What type of, what's their family situation? How critical of a conversation, or how deep a conversation you have? What do they like to do outside of work? I mean, I'm a relationship person, so I'll ask some questions like, hey, what do you do when you're not working? I like to fish, I like NASCAR, I like sports. So all of a sudden you find a little bit of a connection there. And then the next time you reach out to them, you might be able to hit them up, on the weekend of the National Football Championship and say, hey, good luck to your team. I don't know if they're in it or not, but it just creates a little bit of a networking commonality that allows you to make that connection where you might not normally had it might want to felt like a cold connection where this kind of
Right.
warms things up. So tracking that information, I think it might not be as, business centric as you would think, but it helps you get to the next meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And so something that's really interesting. I love that you're bringing this topic up because a lot of the clients that we work with, I ask them, for your senior salespeople, the ones that have been there the longest, are they generating most of their revenue out of just a few accounts, or are they really, managing a lot of accounts and generating more revenue on volume? And they always tell me, Sean, it's fewer accounts. These are their legacy accounts. I got junior salespeople trying to run 300 prospects, and my senior salespeople, same 4 accounts, and they make number every year. Because those accounts, they've developed them, they've grown in volume. But if I'm a junior salesperson or even a mid-level salesperson, well, I don't have 2 decades to really find out who my 3 or 4 accounts are. I want to start developing those relationships today. And so I love that you're using a CRM and you're advocating that to begin gathering that information. So what do I need to make sure that I'm asking either during a meeting or asking myself after a meeting to really mind my brain? Because maybe I can't write it all down fast enough in my notes, but I know 5 minutes after the meeting, I better get to a computer or get to a notepad or get to my CRM and start downloading that. What are some things that you're coaching your salespeople in doing right after a meeting to make sure they're capturing that information?
Yeah, I would say even to back it up a bit during the meeting, just be a better listener than a talker. Don't be talking over people. If you ask an open-ended question and they start telling you, then I always look for a period of silence. I think if you hit a period of silence in the meeting where I don't have to say anything, they don't have to say anything, then they don't feel overwhelmed, right? I think a lot of people don't want to be sold to. They want to meet you, learn about you, kind of get a little bit of a flavor if they could work with you. In our industry, it's very challenging because we're selling a service contract. So the only thing that person knows, they don't know that we have the trucks, the machines, the equipment, the manpower. They just know you as the salesperson. So you have to present an air of confidence and, completion that you can deliver on what you're talking about. So I would say make sure that the person is able to trust you. And how do you do that? I think just being calm and collected, being, prepared. If you're a junior salesperson, do some research on the company. You may be looking at one building that they have, but you want to know that they have a portfolio of buildings across the area or across the country. Because if all of a sudden something comes up in that conversation, say, oh, we'd like to do some work down in, 20 miles from here, you could say right away, well, we service that area. But if you don't know that information going into the meeting, so I think pre-work is good, do some research. It's very easy to do research on companies in our industry, and be ready for the meeting and be a really good listener.
So when you mentioned that you're on service contracts, which is unique in the world of sales, not everybody does that, but you're selling the work of hundreds of people that could come in and service a client site. And so you've got to not only present confidence, but that you've got the muscle, if you will, to back up what you're telling your prospect that you can deliver. Because one person ain't going to get that job done. If your crew disappears, it ain't going to be Bill, taking care of 1,000 acres of worth of property here. So when you're in a meeting like that, and you need to be able to not only project an air of confidence, but also deliver a wealth of knowledge and expertise to be able to say, well, I saw when I walked in here that, you had these flower beds in this area, and how does that affect, how is that affected when a snowstorm comes in, and all the things that you've learned over the course of a career. How do you begin to, look for solutions, if you will, on your way into a client site? How do you, really keep your eyes and ears open so that when you do sit in front of that prospect, who could be, that could be the deal of the year for you, that you can actually address some really immediate issues that they might have?
Yeah, so we find in a lot of situations that the person that's willing to make a change, there's a few reasons. Most of the time it's, poor communication, which isn't crazy. And, the quality isn't the number one. It's poor communication. So the fact
from their incumbent supplier.
Yeah, your vendor is not communicating to the client well enough to keep the client informed or whatever. So we like to say that, we're best in class in communication. And if you're best in class in something, be sure to be able to, elevate a pitch that. Don't make that be something you get in at the end. If it's something you're really good at, let them know right up front, because our experience with these prospect meetings, you might have 15 minutes with them. You really only have like 4 or 5. Right?
Because there's small talk on either end. Yeah,
you can get them engaged after 4 or 5 minutes. Then they'll give you the rest of the 11. But if you're not engaging them right away, you're not really, helping them solve their problem or providing a solution. So I think the idea is, I say to customers sometimes, if you could wave a magic wand, what would be the perfect snow removal contractor?
Right.
And they'd be like, oh, he would call me back. He would have the same guys, he would have new equipment. Well, those are the answers to the quiz, right? They just spilled them out to you. So I think being able to be prepared with that, important question, but also, look at the property. I say, is this something you would be proud of? If you were the manager of this property, I tell my salespeople, if you were managing this property, would you be proud of the way it looks? If it was a snow situation, would you be happy that there was no ice and it was safe for your tenants? That's the type of contractor you want to work with, a service provider. So I think understanding what their pain points are and what their primary needs are, and those are a couple of easy questions right off the bat. Thanks for having me in today. Really appreciate your time. It would be great if we could talk a little bit about your property. But before we get to your property, give me an example of like a real pain point you have. And I ask that question and just listen. Once I do that, they start, oh, the guy doesn't show up. And we've been talking to him about the same thing for 2 years.
Yeah.
Now I can shift my delivery towards his pain points, not my delivery, which is just dumping out a whole bunch of stuff about our company, which he may have already done the research on. Now I'm talking to him directly. Yeah, exactly.
So showing up and just, vomiting all over your prospect, not a good idea. No. Instead, engage them in a conversation. And I think that something that you mentioned is really, really critical. We're probably going to circle back and build a system around this, because this is something that I hear a lot, and I know it could really benefit all the folks in your industry as well, which is kind of downloading the information after a good prospect meeting or a sales meeting, if you will, whether a proposal was issued or not even. If I'm sitting down in front of somebody and there's a potential there for long-term business and it's just not the right time, their contract doesn't expire until June and they really don't want to deal with the legal hassle of breaking it. Lots of reasons why we might not be able to do business today. But if I'm learning something in that meeting, something that I can do more, better, or differently, or that I can get out of my prospect next time that I didn't ask this time, or even on the tail end of what could my company be providing to me that my prospect asked me about. They asked me, how many people does it take to be on site because we have these security issues of XYZ, what's that actual crew size look like? And I don't have an answer. Well, now that delays my sales cycle. I got to go get the answer. So to have that information, even just, questions, if you will, because I find if you can ask the right question of yourself, your team, and of your leadership inside of a sales organization, often the answers are self-apparent. And so let's talk about where you've seen this done really, really well, either from yourself or from the salespeople that in the industry. What are the people that are really doing a great job of downloading notes after a meeting doing that their peers just aren't?
So I think the one thing that you mentioned it, going back a little bit, but I think it connects to what you're asking is ensuring that you have some operational knowledge on how the job would be delivered. You can't just be a messenger, right? You can't be the person that comes in. You can be the waiter, right? And in a restaurant, you can be the waiter, but you should know that the steaks are made a certain way. You should know the types of things and the way that the chefs and the cooks prepare things. Because if they ask you a question, you should be able to deliver that pretty responsibly. If you're a salesperson in a service contract, you should know that your operations team operate this way and they run with 4-man crews and they run with this client probably has knowledge of how their current person is operating. So if they want to make a change, they might not want to make a change to the same system that seems to be maybe failing. I don't know.
Right. I need something better.
If you have a better mousetrap. So that's why I think from sales and operations have to be on the same page. They have to be in lockstep. They cannot be two separate entities. It doesn't work. It never works. And it gets to be very, very, confrontational, because a salesperson will sell a job which they love because they had a great relationship with the decision maker. The operations people may not ever deal with that decision maker because they deal with a facilities person that's on site. So there's a conflict there. So you have to have your sales and ops meetings consistently throughout the year, making sure everybody's on the same page. And we put our salespeople out in the field and train them to work directly with the ops people. So they know if they're selling something, there's a good chance they physically at least participated in that work content, whether it's plowing, running a machine, mowing lawns, trimming, planting flowers, all of those things. There's an expectation that we're really good at, and our salesperson should understand it.
So otherwise, you end up in the problem where you are constantly, not just consistently, but constantly over-promising and under-delivering. because you don't have firsthand knowledge of what that delivery looks like. So if I'm standing this process up inside an organization, let's say that my salespeople are really kind of removed from the delivery of what it is that I sell, because again, it's not just snow and ice here in landscape management. It's cross industries going to be listening to this. So they want to know, Bill, if you're talking, in your industry and outside of your industry, how do you really make sure that the questions are getting asked to start building this type of a program? Because maybe this doesn't exist. Maybe my salespeople have never been on actually delivering what it is that they're selling. And maybe they can't for a variety of reasons, right? They don't have the training. It's not safe, whatever it looks like. So if I'm standing this up, I want to know after a client meeting, what are the questions that I was asked that I need to get answers to? And then, of course, that I need to share with my peers in my company, because I guarantee you, if a question's getting asked from one salesperson, it's going to get asked again if it's not being asked that very same day in another prospect meeting with another salesperson. So when we talk about developing this type of a system, because you get to build this with me today, man, this is going to be me and you creating something new here together. We talk about trimming hope away from a sales strategy. So we use the acronym TRIM. So every system has got a trigger. We got to make it repeatable, improvable, and measurable. And that way it can, across an entire organization, everybody gets the benefit from this thing. So if we talk about a trigger, if I want to start capturing the questions that I was asked by a prospect after a meeting, what would you advise a salesperson's trigger be? Would it be 5 minutes after the meeting, as soon as they get back into their car, as soon as they log off that Zoom call? Where would you say is like the defining moment where this thing needs to begin so that I can begin capturing those questions?
Yeah, 100%. I would say immediately. I would say if you book an appointment with a prospect, if your appointment is booked for half an hour, I would book it for an hour. I would give yourself 30 minutes after that meeting to download before you get on the road driving someplace else. I find it a lot of times people are rushing to the next appointment. Well, you just spent a half an hour with a prospect. Give them the respect that they deserve and figure out what they actually asked you. And if you can actually answer their questions. I think the other thing too is if they ask you a very technical question, then you better get in touch with if it's a manufacturing situation, let's just say we're selling, product and it has to be built in the factory. Well, if you don't have a person in the factory that you can ask that question of, then you're fishing in an ocean with no lure.
No rudder, no anchor, no nothing. Yeah.
Right. So take your information that you're missing and educate yourself. Bring yourself up to speed, whether it's through your sales manager, and you maybe bring it to your sales manager and say, listen, I'm getting this question all the time. How can I learn more about it? And then maybe that's the way the operational, the manufacturing people learn to respect the salespeople more and say, well, he is right. They are asking us, and we do it this way, but nobody really knows. It's kind of like the tree falling in the forest, So I think getting the information down immediately, but also if there's something you're missing, then knowing where to go get that information inside your organization. And if you don't know, ask.
Yeah, I love it. So we have the trigger immediately after. And I really, really love the idea of booking more time on your calendar than the actual meeting's going to take. Because if it's not on a salesperson's calendar, I've learned it ain't happening. Because we're busy, right? We got more calls to make, more people to visit, more value to add. So we've got the trigger handled. Now, to make this thing repeatable, this is often the real tricky part, because not only do I want to make sure that there's time allocated to it, but that I'm asking the same questions of myself as a salesperson consistently. Because if I leave a prospect meeting and I'm just thinking to myself, well, what do I remember from that meeting? Nothing. Okay, well, that was a waste of time, right? That entire exercise is then a moot point. But if I'm thinking to myself, what are the specific maybe 3 questions that I need to ask myself and my team and my leadership in order to really debrief this well? We found 3 really good questions to ask after a meeting and get your insight on this. The first thing is to ask myself as a salesperson, what is it that I wish I would have known stepping into that meeting? The second question is, what do I wish I would have known about that prospect? What did the prospect, where they go to school, what clubs were they part of, what social activities, like you mentioned, would have been valuable to know going in? And the third thing is, what should I have gotten from my team? If I had to do it all over again, if I could rewind the clock, what are the things I could have gotten from my company, the fact sheets, the product specs, the value statements, the testimonials, whatever that really would have helped me close that sale better that day? What could my company have provided to me? So just having a list of a couple of specific questions is kind of prompting questions to start getting my brain working about what do I wish I would have known going into that meeting that I know now. So what are some things that you recommend salespeople do to make this type of a process repeatable?
That's a great theme. I've thought of it that way, but never in that context. I think it's really just, fail to prepare to fail, right? So if you don't get in there and get yourself ready, then when you get in there, you're going to get stumped. And once you get stumped, people start getting nervous. And once you get nervous, the client sees that. So I think it's being prepared is exactly what you say. I think having some sort of leave behind. You don't need a portfolio, but a one pager that maybe speaks to your strengths, and maybe it has some contact information. Maybe it has a little bit of color, so it can have a little shelf life. It kind of hangs around your desk. Everybody's gone paperless nowadays, but something physical that they can put their hands on again and see the brand, I think would be important, right? If you're trying to get in front of them, and maybe it's a client that doesn't know anything about your business, maybe they can get on your website and learn more about you. So from a repeatable standpoint, I'd say try and leave something, a little leave behind, and going in there and just asking those key questions, figuring out if you do know something and have something in common with them, and making them feel like they're comfortable talking to you, because a lot of the information they have everything that you need. How do you get it from them is the key, right? They know the contract, they know the budget, they know the season, they know how many years that the customer has been working. The customer's been working with this current provider. So it's just being confident and organized to be able to get those questions out.
And of course, having those questions prepped ahead of time is critical. Otherwise, I'm hoping I remember all the things that I'm supposed to ask. And the third part of this system that we're building is making this thing improvable. And so really ties together the questions I'm asking or should be asking, and after the meeting, making this entire process improvable. Because as a sales leader, if I'm asking my salespeople to do this, to take time out of their day to download questions in this process, and I keep hearing the same thing, the same question come up year after year after year, it means I'm not doing my job. Like training has to change somewhere, because otherwise everybody's getting stumped on not asking about budget or whatever it might be. And so if I want to make this thing improvable, what do I do with the information that's coming out of this prompting question process, if you will, to make sure that I close that loop, so to speak? If I forgot to ask about budget, how do I need to make sure that I always ask about budget, so I'm not hoping I remember to do that next time?
Yeah, so create a kind of a new sale, SOP. How did you win that job? Strategize with your ops team and say, we won this way. We use these best practices, and do a little debrief with the customer. Maybe 2 or 3 months in, get in front of them and say, I know we started with you new. What did you find about us that you thought we were the company to go with? What were some of the strengths? And let the customer say, I liked you guys because you were honest, you were upfront, you asked good questions. Okay, well, those are the answers to the quiz when you go to the next opportunity, the next prospect. So I think doing some sort of debrief, it's called a new client handoff package. So the salespeople go through and compartmentalize all the information that's going to give the operations team success. So if we make the operations team swim upstream, it's not going to work, right? So we got to get all the answers, map the property, ask all the key questions during the sales process. And then when the season hits, because in winter, it's the first storm, that's the season, we can't be asking questions then. It's too late. So if the customer trusts us and likes us, and that's why they decide to go with us, that's very repeatable. We know now that that's why customers make a change, because they need consistency with the vendor that they're dealing with.
And instead of waiting 3 months into the contracts we are able to close, why not front load that information into our conversations, into our marketing, producing videos about it on our website, really, not making people build the bridge, saying we're going to build this thing for you. Here's why people choose our company. And I've gotten to see a couple of the videos from your company. You do a great job at that, right? Making it very clear. Here's why you should use us, because other customers have said this. So we've got the trigger, we've got making this thing repeatable, we have making it improvable. Now let's talk about measuring it. Now, obviously, we could measure this on, if we're taking information out of a meeting, changing the way that we sell next time, building better questions, coming in with checklists or scripts or SOPs. That's great. That's exactly what kept us alive on the battlefield. But I want to measure this. Do I just measure it by length of sales cycle shortening? Do I measure it just by closed contracts? What are the things that you would recommend salespeople do to justify taking the time, a half hour after every meeting, to really download all the questions that they wish they would have had ahead of time?
Yeah, I think getting in front of the process and understanding who your ideal client is, makes it easier to measure, right? If you're spending a lot of time with customers that you would probably never even get a chance to work with, that would be a waste of everybody's time. So if you strategize with your team and say, okay, this is our ideal customer, create your most wanted list, and then push that information and the key information about your company in front of those targets, and figure out which of those targets, those prospects, are wanting to have conversations with you. So I would say, categorize it as, the leads are the leads, but the prospects are the people that actually have a conversation. And then, at what level do those people move it towards a request for pricing, request for information? So I would say create some sort of metrics around that. So it's measurable to say, okay, we use this system. We got this prospect. We got this many prospects to talk to us. We got this many prospects to give us a opportunity to price their work. We got this many awards from that. That seems to be a system that works. Let's continue that. Let's repeat it. Right. So I think your acronym of TRIM is really, really, really consistent with what salespeople should be following, because it does get a little bit overwhelming when you're running in multiple directions. You can easily skip a step, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, what happened there?
All of a sudden you're hoping, right?
Right.
And
hoping,
hope didn't keep us alive on the battlefield of sales, and it's definitely going to keep you alive on the battlefield of business or any place else in life, really. So I love the fact that we've built this and make sure that we get it shared as wide in your industry as we can, because I know it's going to help folks. So as we wrap up here, because I know folks are going to want to get back on the phones, start contacting prospects again when they get done listening to this. How do we find out more about you, sir, about Outdoor Pride, about the great work that you're doing? And if any company, by the way, hint, hint, needs an example of how to do what we're talking about well, check out Bill's website, because he does a great job of it. So share with us a little bit about that so folks can find out more about you.
Yeah, so we're Outdoor Pride. We're a family-owned business, locally owned and operated in New Hampshire, 30-year brand, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Maine, Rhode Island. We service basically all of New England. We specialize in commercial, landscape, and snow management for office, industrial, institution, hospitals. The bigger the property, the better it is for us. We really focus on those types of customers that maybe the middle to small customer client vendor couldn't really service their needs, where we know we can. We've got really strong systems. I've been doing it for over 30 years, and I recently joined this company about three or 4 years ago. And I can't tell you that the operations group that's here is amazing. The things that they do, we have what's called a one team mentality, #one team. So we back each other up in every spot, similar to your military background. When you get into a jam, where do you look? To your right and left, right? Where's your buddy system? Where are the people that can get you out of that jam? Sometimes it's not just by yourself. So we found on a Saturday or Sunday morning, I'm a vice president of sales, but I'm out there, I jump on a loader during a storm. I help my guys out. And it's just created this culture of trust. And this culture of, there's a lot of energy around that. So it's a lot of fun. When it's fun, it's not like work.
Ain't that the truth? And what is the website that people need to go to find out more?
It's outdoorpride.com.
Love it. Love it. Well, Bill, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your decades of experience with us in sales and how to get better at it. And so for the folks tuning in, make sure that you're following us at Bulletproof Selling on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube for these live streams. And of course, the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere that podcasts can be found. And for more sales systems to help you build better pipeline, to help you get better results, check out the resources that we're constantly posting over at bulletproof-selling.com. Sean Rhodes here with Mr. Bill Butts. It's been a pleasure serving the sales community with you, sir. Let's go out there and make selling bulletproof.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it, Sean.